Yep.
Okay.
All right, you're all set.
Good afternoon. This is a special meeting of the East Long Meadow Town Council for June the 9th, 2020. I will open the meeting now with a moment of silence, and we continue to ask for your thoughts and remembrances for our first responders, our servicemen and women around the globe, all of our government officials who are poised with having to make difficult decisions in the face of COVID-19. And finally, I would ask each of us to reflect, as well as our listeners, on whatever it is we might be able to do by our own efforts to further the cause for social justice and equity in our lives and in America. Thank you. In accordance with Mass General Law, this meeting is being audio taped and videotaped and is being provided by Zoom webinar, as well as on streaming live right now on Facebook. If there are any individuals in the audience doing the same, would you please identify yourselves? Seeing none on my screen, we can move on to item number 3 on our agenda this afternoon, and that is public comments. Jeannie, we have just one individual who would like to speak this afternoon.
Yes, Connor O'Shea signed up later this morning for public comment.
Okay, so Ryan, is Connor in the audience?
Yep, I'm pulling him in right now.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello, Connor. If you can just, again, for the record keeping, identify your name and address, please.
Sure. I'm Connor O'Shea, 20 Tanglewood Drive. And so first, thank you, Kathy, for allowing me to speak this afternoon. Just 2 quick things. One, I would just like to congratulate Marilyn Richards and Mike Kane on their election. And secondly, I found these virtual meetings of all the different committees in town to be helpful. And it seems to have brought some more engagement in the community. Eventually, I'm sure they're going to return to in-person when all of the COVID stuff inevitably settles down. But I wonder if there's ways that we could continue to have some of these aspects moving forward, whether it's public comments, public hearings, or people that are making presentations on matters to the council. If some of those things could be allowed to be remote if those people can't attend the meetings in person. Otherwise, that was it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. It's certainly something we can investigate. It's my understanding that normal open meeting laws may have provisions for remote input, and so certainly we will look into that and do our very best at the time that we return to live in-person meetings. And again, Connor, I'd like to say that thank you for your participation in the public election last week, and congratulate you on the voter turnout that you received, as well as to say stay interested in government and encourage your generation to start to come out and get actively involved. Anything else for public comment? Okay, then we can move to council comment. Is there anyone on the council who would like to comment? Mr. Henry, you're on.
Thank you, Kathy. I have a couple of comments. First of all, I want to urge any resident who is concerned about their taxes, who would that be, to please check the excellent reminder article last week by the vice chair of the Longmeadow Finance Committee. While Longmeadow is much closer to the May 25th, to the maximum 25 per thousand limit, we in East Longmeadow share the exact same budget challenges. And this article very clearly describes so many of these challenges, and it gives you a real appreciation of the problem. So I encourage anyone to look at the last week's reminder article and pull that out and say, this is also our challenge. Secondly, if I may,
Certainly.
I would like to have I would like to see if Bruce Fenny could apprise us of the issue of the technical violation of the haloacetic acids, which apparently is not our fault, but which has been going on now for almost a year. And I wonder if he could address us to say what more can be done. I know it's basically Springfield's area, but I would like more information on that. Thank you.
You're welcome. What Bruce is scheduled to speak later in the agenda, and if he feels he's got the information in front of him to address that, then he'll be invited to do that. If not, perhaps he can answer that question through an email to us in another day or two.
No hurry.
Okay. Anything else under council comments? If not, we're moving to the next item on the agenda, and that is the town manager report.
Hello, everybody.
Hello there.
You have my
Hi.
report from the other day. As I said to someone yesterday, I authored this on Thursday, and quite a bit of activity happened in the town and over the intervening 3 or 4 days, as the chair mentioned. But in any case, we're now up to our knees in week 13 of our COVID response. We had our final operations telephone conference this morning. I think we've had about 40 of them since this began, but as things have tapered off and some activities are returning, we've decided that those weekly calls are no longer necessary and they'll be on an as-needed basis. So I'm sure you're all aware that phase 2 began on Monday with the announcement last Saturday. And again, I don't want to repeat the remarks of Kathy Hill, but there was an enormous amount of effort that was necessitated when that announcement was made at roughly noontime on Saturday. The expectation that everything would be ready to go Monday morning at 8 a.m. was a bit unrealistic, but I think I owe a great deal of gratitude, as does everybody that lives in the community, to a number of department heads that really went out of their way to get this done. And not only from Saturday to today, but as Kathy said, from Thursday on. In particular, Mary Race of the IT department. She worked, honestly, I said this morning at our call, I think she worked 36 hours on Friday alone getting this online application ready. And various people, Jennifer in my office did a great job receiving the submissions over the weekend, forwarding them immediately to Kevin Duquette, who worked tirelessly Saturday and Sunday and Monday. Jeannie started it all with her connections to Chelmsford, which was the springboard for our application. So it was really a very affirming community effort, half a dozen department heads at a minimum. And then to top it off, we had the protest, the Black Lives Matter protest over the weekend that engaged the police department, the fire department, DPW, health, myself, council was involved, council, CIL and SEL were involved in trying to determine what was the appropriate procedure there. So we've had a lot going on, but I'm happy to say everything turned out as well as could possibly be expected. And I just want to make my appreciation a part of the public record. We have this phase 2 upon us, which requires self-certification so that the enforcement activity on behalf or conducted by the health department should abate a little bit, because most of the new activities that are being resumed in phase 2 will be enforced only as a result of complaints from the public, as opposed to phase 1 when businesses had to be determined to be essential and there was some disagreement about which ones were and which ones weren't. And that created an awful lot of extra activity for Amy and her staff that hopefully, as I said, will be tapering off a bit now that we're in phase 2. The recreation department is chomping at the bit to get started. They've had enormous response to their solicitation for camp and Pine Knoll Pool memberships, and they're extremely excited to get going with summer sports, as they had to essentially eliminate all of the spring activity. So there's a great deal of pent-up energy on the part of the kids as well as their parents. And Donna and Jordy are right behind them in the energy department as far as getting everything up to snuff and ready to go. With respect to the finances, I did submit a request for CARES funding to the Commonwealth last Wednesday, and it was acknowledged. So we know they have our submission, and we're hoping that that money will be forwarded to us very, very soon. It's part of that 1.4 million that I referenced before as being East Long Meadow's eligibility. What they do is the formula, we had approximately $450,000 of claimed expenses from March 1st to June 30th. We can submit later for expenses from July 1 to December 30th. And what the form does is it subtracts what they estimate will be the 75% reimbursement from FEMA, from the amount that you submit as your request. So we're looking for 174,000 to come rolling in one of these days, and hopefully it'll be next week. Other financial matters, obviously the Finance Oversight Committee continues to meet weekly, as does the Capital Planning Committee. And we're moving towards budget resolution as quickly as we can, but we're still in the dark as far as what our state local revenues will be, and that is the biggest obstacle to creation and presentation of a budget. We have begun to recall certain of our furloughed employees to work. The police department staff is now fully back on site, as is the DPW administrative staff. And I think the clerk's office will be returning to full staff soon. The accommodations have been made to provide appropriate distancing and protection between workstations, and that was part of the issue, not allowing people to come back to work. So slowly but surely, we're returning to full staff, and I hope that by mid-July or the 1st of August, we'll be all the way there. Bethany Yao has been appointed as the interim planning department and economic development department director. She's really done a terrific job in the last month or two that she's been serving in that capacity. She's getting rave reviews from the planning board members and the Conservation Commission members, and has really been on top of every issue that I could possibly expect her to work with. She's been very involved with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission on some grant applications in the hopes that we can get some funding through our municipal vulnerability status, which qualifies us to apply for a grant that could be used in part for our master plan, with only an in-kind contribution from the town, which would be Bethany's time, as well as other department heads that would be involved in that sort of thing. I do suggest on other personnel matters, the reappointment that is, of Martin Grungen as to the Board of Assessors. Marty's currently an appraiser and well-versed in real estate valuation. He's been on the board for a number of years, works very well with the other board members and with Diane Bishop. And she recommended to me that his application for reappointment be favorably viewed by you, but it's one of those appointments that under the charter, you have the right to reject. We continue just working together with the state. I just was on a call just before this meeting with our statewide CEO calls. They're every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Many of those conference calls, webinars continue. Again, they're frankly exhausting after 13 weeks of it, but they're always helpful, and people are very cooperative at the state level, trying to dispense as much guidance to us in the local municipalities as they possibly can. So we're anxious to get phase 2 underway. And I'm hopeful that our cooperation level with the community will be appreciated going forward, and that we'll have very few blips later on in the financial matters on your agenda. I do have a request for a 1/12 budget, but I won't get into it now. I'll wait till you're ready for that later on. Olga's going to join us, but she had a banking deadline of 3 o'clock. So she called me at 5:02 to say, I might be late joining the meeting in case there's any questions on the submission that went along with that 1/12 request, but she should be with us shortly. So if anyone has any questions, Chair.
Any questions? Mr. Henry?
Just one quick question. Is there any timetable, Mary, for the town hall reopening, even partly, and the library reopening?
There's no date certain. If we reopen town hall, it will be probably at the end of July, and we will perhaps go by appointment only in the beginning. The library staff has returned, at least in part. They do expect to begin their curbside service, drop off and pick up within the next 10 days. Layla Johnston reported on that this morning. So, the recommendations from the state are that, you can open your town buildings, but the guidance is still, if you don't have to, and if you're operating efficiently, your essential services, then don't rush into it. We also haven't had the order fulfilled yet for our plexiglass installations and things of that nature that'll provide the additional safety. So I personally would like to wait until all of that is installed. And unless I'm missing something, I'm not hearing complaints from the public that they're not having their business attended to. So the longer we can delay, I think the better for our staff, as long as we can attend to the needs of the community.
Thanks, Mary.
Sure. Welcome.
Any other? Tom?
Mary, with regards to the Recreation Department offering the summer camps, is that something they expect to happen fairly soon? Is there a starting date that they've announced? And lastly, is the pool going to be part of that process?
Yes, yes, and yes. The summer camps are allowed in phase 2, as are pools. The pool aspect is going to be included in, phase 2 has 2 steps. So pools with camp affiliation are allowed in step 1 of phase 2. Pool memberships to the public will be in step 2 of phase 2. I don't know the start date, but Jordy reported this morning on our conference call that I think he said, if memory serves me right, that camps were due to begin within the next 10 days. Maybe Jeannie has a recollection of that, but I know he commented on it. They're overwhelmed with applications. They're already full. And I think that the rec department did put out one of their constant contact email blasts a night or two ago, referencing some of those camp issues. So yeah, they're all set, Tom, and they'll be up and running probably within the next week.
Thank you.
I want to apologize for my chuckling there in the middle of your remark that the camps were full. I can only imagine all of the homeschooling mothers, fathers, and grandparents who are willing to pay right now out of pocket to give these kids and themselves some relief.
Right. They'll pay double.
That's right. If there is no objection to the appointment to the Board of Assessors, then I'll entertain a motion to go forward with the appointment of Martin Grungen, reappointment to the Board of Assessors.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion? Again, a reminder that all of our votes when we are meeting remotely must be by roll call. So Marilyn?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mike is not here yet. Tom?
Yes.
And Pat?
Yes, and thank you.
You're welcome. That motion passes 5-0. And again, congratulations to Marty for all the good work that he does do with the other assessors and with Diane. Moving on to approval of minutes, we have in your packets the May 12th, 2020 open session minutes. If you have no corrections or comments, then I will entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
I move we accept the open session minutes of the May 12th, 2020 Town Council meeting.
Yep, I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Marilyn?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
I will vote yes as well. Tom?
Yes.
And Pat?
Yes.
And those minutes pass unanimously, are approved unanimously. Second in the packet is the May 26th, 2020 open session minutes. Again, if there are additions or corrections you would like to note, otherwise I will entertain a motion to approve those as well.
I'll make a motion to accept the executive session minutes.
These are the regular session.
Oh, I apologize. I apologize. My bad.
I move we accept the open session minutes of May 26, 2020 Town Council meeting.
And I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Marilyn?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
I am a yes. Tom?
Abstain.
And Pat?
Yes.
So that would be approved. Do we have enough for approval? 4, yes. 4 and 1 abstention. And now moving to the May 26, 2020 executive session minutes. If there are no comments or corrections, I'll entertain that motion for approval.
I'll make a motion to accept the executive session minutes of the May 26, 2020 Town Council meeting.
Who is supposed to second that?
I'll second for Mike.
Okay, thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion? Yes, Pat. Too many names in front of me.
Thanks to Jackie for excellent work.
Yes. But there's a lot of transcribing there, especially in the May 12th ones.
Yeah.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Marilyn?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
I am a yes. Tom?
Abstain.
And Pat?
Yes.
And those as well pass 4-0-1. Okay, we now are moving to item 7 on the agenda today, communication, correspondence, and announcements. And under 7A, the Antonacci Family Foundation donation to the Food Bank of Western Massachusetts. I was the recipient of a very nice, well, you all were actually, letter from Mr. Andrew Morehouse, the executive director of the Food Bank of Western Massachusetts, indicating that the Antonacci family, are they a foundation? Antonacci Family Foundation made an extremely generous donation to the Millions of Meals initiative. And this was a virtual food drive. I'm reading from the letter here, to assist those struggling with food insecurity, especially during the recent health crisis. And Mr. Morehouse was writing to let us know that the food bank, through the generosity of the donation, was able to give a sizable donation to our East Long Meadow Senior Friendship Club. And they will continue to receive a direct allocation as part of this initiative. So I simply want to make the public aware of that, the kind generosity of the Antonacci family, as well as the food bank in assisting folks in our community as well. And we thank them for their initiative. And now, Jeannie, we have the June 20th, 2020 town election report.
Okay, first I'll read the results of the election. Marilyn Richards got 795 votes, Michael Kane 744, and Connor O'Shea 510 for town council. And Gregory Thompson got 869 votes, and Elizabeth Marjan Boucher got 883 votes. There was a voter turnout of 9.5%, which I thought was pretty good. Over 49% of the ballots cast for absentee. So I was happy with that because we had encouraged people to vote absentee. We got 3 robocalls out, the reminder, we had 2 articles, the website, Facebook page, the flashing message board. So I was happy with that turnout and the absentee voting turnout too. And the layout that we used for the COVID safe, I think worked well. We got a lot of compliments from the voters coming in. I had an election training of the workers just prior to the polls opening at 3, and Captain Beecher from the fire department came in and he demonstrated how to sanitize the voting booths that were sanitized after every use. We sanitized a supply of revolving pens for people to use as they came in. And we were happy to have the use of the cafeteria. The polling location is in the gym, so we could use the adjacent cafeteria to line up people in queues. So we could monitor how many voting booths were being used, to have people being safely distanced when they were using the voting booths, making sure that the voting booths were dry from the disinfectant. So it was a collaborative effort. The custodians were great. They were able to set up a week before because the kids weren't in school, and we went in a couple of times to check out the setup and made some tweaks and were able to mark off the floors. So it went well. I thought we had one voter that did not want to wear a mask, and we didn't ask why. We encouraged people to wear masks. God bless you, Marilyn.
Thank you.
And what we did was we led that person to their precinct to check in, and then we led them to a voting booth that was isolated from the rest of the voting booth so they could use that machine, and then they cast their ballot and off they went. So that went fine too. So I don't know what September 1 will bring. That's a state primary. I'm hearing that the state wants to mail each registered voter an absentee ballot application. So we'll be flooded with more. It's a lot of in-house work, but whatever we have to do for the state that mandates the requirements to make voting easier for people, we're on board for everything. So, and September 1st is also the first day of school. And if the kids do start school in person, September 1st, we won't have the advantage of that cafeteria, but I think that's
If I can interrupt you,
Sure.
only because I tend to follow all things educational.
Mhm.
Were they to open on September 1st as planned? The recommendation is that students will eat inside the classroom. They will not be in the communal areas, so you'll catch a break there.
Okay, I also heard Springfield is going to continue with online learning through the fall, so I don't know if that's an indication of anything, but we'll just make accommodations.
That story will unfold right up until September 1st.
Right,
I'm sure.
right. So, and I'm sure Gordon's going to be pulling his hair out, but I thought it went well. So September 1, we'll see what happens. And, you know, we're just unreeling from the last election, and July 1st we'll be heading out and getting ready for the next one. So it's going to be a busy year. It has been. So, but things are going well.
And the real treat will be November the 2nd. Or
The big
3rd,
one.
The big one.
Right.
Well, thank you for that, Jeannie. Any questions for Jeannie? I had the chance to do 2 things: to vote by absentee ballot so that I could understand the process, and also to visit the polling station at Birchland. And I can't stress enough how efficient the layout was, and the efficiency and upbeat attitude of all of the poll workers to make this work well. And I'd have to say, people coming in and out to vote, I overheard some small remarks about, well, that was very easy. I was expecting it to be a problem. So Jeannie, kudos to you and Jackie and Mary in your office for making this come together, and all of your poll workers.
Thank you. We appreciate that. It was a change for the poll workers. Even the lines were going differently, but they were all on board and, like you said, enthusiastic and willing to do anything to accommodate for the changes that we're facing. So
Good.
thank you.
Good job. Okay, in your packet number 7C is a letter from Michael Schoenberg regarding police body cameras. And for our public, Mr. Schoenberg has written very briefly to the council, complimenting the efforts of our police department in general to be as responsive as possible in their training, to when they have to answer calls that may have an escalation of events, that the police have stayed updated in their training. I'm going to use his wording on evidence-based police de-escalation techniques and methods. The purpose of his letter is to not only compliment our police department, but also to ask that we, with the chief, enter a discussion around the purchase of body-worn cameras. And so that said, since this is an area that most of us on the council have next to no expertise in, I am forwarding this to, I've already forwarded this to Chief DeLassio, and I'm sure that he and our manager can debate the capacity for a town like this to go forward with that. Certainly, you may have caught an article in the Springfield paper just in the last few days, and clearly the police force in Springfield is, I don't know how large it is, but it's large. And
500.
to bring
500.
those officers up to the point where they can all have the body-worn camera on duty will cost the city of Springfield in the neighborhood of $3 million. Clearly, that would not be an expense of that magnitude for us, but it will be an expense. So I leave it to the chief and the public safety officials to decide how they want to start a discussion and look at that, and down the road bring back some conversation starters for us. So thank you to Mr. Schoenberg for pointing that out. Okay, moving on to item 8, public hearings. We have none scheduled. Orders of the day. This is the reason we're meeting this on such a bright and sunny afternoon. And it'll also mean we'll be able to have our dinners this evening at a reasonable hour. The licensing matters, discussion of the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission advisory regarding local licensing authorities' approval of outdoor seating. Say that 3 times. Mary, can I ask you to start the conversation?
Sure. The phase 2 allows for open air dining and with certain restrictions regarding spacing of tables. And because a lot of venues in town, I think Jeannie told me there were 46 victualler licenses, but only perhaps 10 or so of them have alcohol permits, licenses. So because people oftentimes their license and their permit was limited to indoor space, if they wanted to expand outdoors to take advantage of this to try to rebound their business, certain procedures were necessary to amend their permits. The planning board met to work on the site arrangements and make certain recommendations that were in compliance and conformity actually with Chelmsford and what our online submission was. And the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission also has relaxed its normal public hearing requirements in an effort to expedite your ability as a local licensing authority to approve amended licenses and permits for alcohol service and outdoor dining, just to expedite the resumption of business in the Commonwealth. So I think your package is, Jeannie, correct me if I'm wrong, has the ABCC bulletin attached.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's one that's current, and then there's one that references an earlier relaxation back from 2015. But those are essentially the foundation of this request. And the idea was these applications are going to come in, we think, on a rolling basis. We did have a couple that were very immediate over the weekend, but I know there are several others in the pipeline that haven't been presented yet. And since they all need approval, if they're a license expansion, I mean, my thought was, and I guess Jeannie and I discussed it, was to have your board perhaps consider delegating the authority to one of your members so that as the applications came in, you didn't have to wait 2 weeks for your next council meeting in order to approve those.
Okay, thank you for that. And all of this, the ball for all of this after the governor's order started with our planning board on last Thursday evening. They met for a special meeting to allow the establishments who already have these orders in place or licenses in place to have a temporary extension permit that effective anywhere from June 4th until November 1st. And that is the end date for the governor's relaxation of outdoor dining. And of course, in New England, you probably would not want to push it a whole lot farther into the calendar. So is there any discussion from the council regarding all of this? Marilyn.
Hey, everyone. I just want to mention that I've been out and about and I've seen some of the setups already in place, and I'm excited that we've made such great progress in a short period of time. My biggest concern was, of course, a combination of dining patrons and vehicular traffic. And I'm getting a sense I'm more comfortable with how things have played out of the areas that I've looked at. I mean, we just had a car drive into the car wash, and so we really need to make sure that our patrons are safe, and I get a sense that's all being addressed.
As I stated early on, that multiple hands have been involved in this process to expedite it for our businesses in town, and just to make sure that they have addressed every aspect of it. And we're pleased with all of that. And the team effort, if you will. Pat.
Thank you, Kathy. I have a question for Mary, and that would regard those restaurants that are contiguous or adjacent to another business. And I'm thinking, just for an example, of Via Napolitana that shares a parking lot with a convenience store, and wondering whether our rules or our suggestions have any recommendation that the approval of the abutter be involved. And I don't know whether that's true or not.
It's not necessarily the approval of the abutter, although I think most venues have obtained that, but they have to have approval of their landlord when they're encroaching on parking spaces, and there are other requirements regarding the perimeter of the parking area to protect patrons, to Marilyn's point. So like Villa Napolitana created a new patio, but off to as you look at the restaurant's front door, it's off to the left on the side, almost at the side street. And that passed Kevin Duquette's muster quite quickly. And they had to submit certifications from, as I said, from their landowner, if they're a tenant, unless they own the building themselves, obviously. And all of that paperwork had to be in before they received their certificate.
Thank you.
It was all outlined in the online submission that was on our website. Every detail that had to be addressed was itemized.
Marilyn?
With respect to shared parking, it's pretty clear that the dining patrons are reduced in great numbers from the original ability of the restaurant, so their parking needs would also be reduced. So I'm sure that this is all being taken into consideration as planning is looking at this, as building inspector is looking at this. So it should be okay.
Okay, so if there's no other concerns or comments, we do have a motion there that would authorize the council president to sign these approvals, the amended approvals on behalf of the council, because as Jeannie and Mary have said, they're going to trickle in as these various establishments are ready to be up and running. So that's it.
Comment?
Yeah. Pat,
Kathy, I was wondering whether we might want to add Mike onto that, because it's a burden on you to be here always. And if a business comes in and you're not here for whatever reason for 24 hours, they'd be all exercised. So I would propose we might want to add Mike to that. He is as vice chair. I think he has.
thank you. That's a good point. That way we are sure that one of us will be able to address it in that same day.
to share the
Yeah.
burden.
Right, my comment, Kathy?
Yes, Thomas.
I think we need to amend that a little further. Authorize the town council president and vice president and not name someone because we have an election coming up on July 1st.
Good point.
And rather than have to go through this exercise again.
Absolutely. So that said, if someone would like to make that motion with the amendments we've just discussed, we can move that along as well.
Sure. I'd like to move that we authorize the town council president in lieu of the town council president, the vice president, to approve amended alcohol beverages licenses on behalf of the town council, being the local licensing authority, for the purpose of temporary outdoor dining areas, and set amended licenses to expire no later than November 1st, 2020.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor? Marilyn?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mike?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And Pat?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes 6-0. Okay, we are now to financial matters, also a very pertinent topic. Approval of deficit spending going to a single month budget request. Mary?
You. Your packet contains a cover sheet entitled Deficit Spending Approval, Single Month Budget Request, Fiscal Year 21, and an attachment that shows municipal expenditures, school expenditures, and enterprise fund expenditures totaling $8,275,850.28 for the month of July. We have also attached the Munis spreadsheet, which is from July of 2019, which was the first month of fiscal 20. This authority that I'm seeking I'm seeking your approval today on the 9th, because assuming you grant it, it has to be forwarded to Boston in order for the town to maintain its operating accounts and spending authority as of July 1. And the whole basis for this is because we do not have a budget in place. We do not anticipate that we will have a budget in place by June 30, although that is the stated goal of the Finance Oversight Committee. But this is a stopgap measure so that in the event that we are not successful in passing a budget by that date, we have the authority to continue spending. So it's just an estimate. The Division of Local Services in Boston doesn't require a specific amount. It's an approval of spending authority, essentially, and not a line-by-line review of it. And July is an extremely expensive month in municipal finance. We paid our Hampden County retirement contribution in a lump sum in July every year, and that's almost $3.5 million. The reason we do that is if we delay it and pay it, we do have the option of paying 50% in July and 50% in August, but we also pay $50,000 extra for that privilege. So the idea is that we'll save that 50 and spend it all here. So that's about as simple as I can make it. And it's about as complicated or as complex as I'd like to make it, but obviously happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Kathy, questions?
Certainly.
Mary, I have two questions.
Yep.
The first is, since this is an estimated amount,
Yes.
is it better to estimate higher on the safe side as to not exceed?
Well, for
That's
July,
question one.
for not for July, because typically you budget a 1/12 with some precision, but they, in July in particular, because of the reason I just offered with the payment of annual expenses on a one-time basis in July, you're paying in excess of your 1/12 budget for the year. And I'm not too concerned about our ability to meet this, because even though some expenses have gone up, like our insurances and particularly our health insurance costs and a few other things, we've saved a lot of money in fiscal 20 with the closure of Town Hall, and there'll be a considerable amount of turnbacks. So whatever expenses are up a little in July of fiscal 21, I think will be offset by the savings from fiscal 20.
Okay, that answered my second question, which had to do with the known increases in insurance, which were substantial.
Yes,
It sounds like you've taken that into account.
yes, I did.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Pat?
For Mary, the budget, if I read it as submitted, must account for anticipated reduction in revenues and also reflect prudent fiscal restraint. So my question is this budget actually the same budget as was for last year? Or is this budget somewhat less because of known or anticipated reductions in revenue and hopefully fiscal restraint?
The attachment, the Munis attachment, is the exact payments that were made, and the summary on the face page is the amount that was paid out in July of 2019.
Thank you. Yeah.
So but I think having said that, it still does take into account lessened revenues, because we can accommodate them by the savings that we've accumulated from fiscal 20, from the last quarter in fiscal 20. Does that make sense? You look like I'm not getting through.
No, I understand, but that leads me to the question of I think I referenced this last time. I was concerned about the 1/12 issue, and obviously it's not 1/12, but concerned that we do not overspend just because we have this excess ability approved by the state, recognizing that we still only have 11 more months of reduced income and hopefully some expense reductions. And I'm saying this, I know that you're watching the pennies very carefully, but it does look like a big number.
Yeah, it's grotesquely large based on the other 11 months of the year, but mainly because of that $3.5 million contribution to the retirement. And if we're still in this procedural dilemma in August and September, I think we can make the adjustments necessary to reduce that 1/12 amount, what it will be, in light of reduced revenues as it becomes known to us what they're going to be. We'll obviously have to budget accordingly for our next 1/12 submission.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Mary? Okay, then we have a motion before us to go forward.
I move that the town council approve the monthly expenditure plan for July 2020 as submitted by town manager Mary McNally.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. Marilyn?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mike?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And Pat?
Yes.
And that motion passes unanimously. Okay, we are on to old business, and that is back to a discussion about traffic concerns on Rural Road that we've addressed in a previous town council meeting, and relative to just an instruction we asked of our DPW superintendent to come back to us at some point with estimates on some traffic calming measures. And we have Bruce Fenny with us. And so Bruce, I will take it away.
Okay, so I first want to kind of give an overall overview of two of the items that you guys have received in your packet. And the first I want to discuss with you is the speed tables. The speed tables that I've given to you as far as an estimate was $128,000. Keep in mind these are large structures, and these are for two at this location. And when we talk about the speed humps, we are recommending two on Rural Lane, okay? So first I would like to give the council a short explanation of what a speed table is, typically used under Mass Highway rules and regulations and the Institute of Transportation Engineers. Speed tables are used in areas where there is heavy vehicular traffic and heavy pedestrian traffic, and have two receiving sidewalks on both sides of the street. So typically when you put a speed table in, you have sidewalks on either side of the street. So typically they're used to obviously elevate pedestrian traffic crossing the street. And then also it elevates the pedestrians obviously at a higher level, so vehicles can see them even further. In some instances, beacons and things of that nature are installed along with these types of projects. But in the project that I've submitted to you as far as the estimate, it doesn't include those because there is no receiving sidewalks. Okay? I'm not sure if you guys have any other specific questions regarding the speed tables. I don't know if you've understood what I've had to offer you as far as the speed tables. I did send out something earlier this morning regarding the speed humps, and I will get to that after if you'd like.
So I'm deducing from your remarks, Bruce, that the speed table is a much bigger endeavor,
Yes.
both in size and obviously in price.
Yes, it's actually a 12-foot wide structure in width, and then 24 feet long from curb to curb at that location. And also part of that estimate includes stormwater basins. So obviously to mitigate any stormwater or anything on the sides when it comes to rain and everything else. So that's part of the pricing also. You can see it's a pretty large price tag. I've actually kind of took Long Meadows. I actually had a conversation with Mario Mazza over at the Long Meadow DPW. And I've actually looked at his bid document, see what they incorporated into their speed tables. So I've kind of taken their kind of project and took what we needed out of that project that fits on Rural Lane.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Bruce before he continues?
No? Okay.
We want to talk about speed humps.
Yes.
now,
So
right?
the speed humps, I sent you guys over this morning just to try to give you some more information regarding these. So the total for these is actually $3,488.38. This is for two speed humps at that location, including signs. These are modular rubberized devices that we actually affix to the asphalt. They're roughly 35.5 inches long and 19.5 inches wide at a height of 2.1 inch. So like I said, these are devices that we can actually take up during the winter months for plowing ability and everything else, and reinstall during the spring months. I don't know if you guys have any other questions. This also would be two structures. I've actually talked with the police chief, and he also recommends obviously putting two structures at that location.
So to clarify, when I first heard you say two structures, I envisioned one at 2 different spots on rural. But now you're saying they're what, 35 inches wide?
Well, yes, but these are modular, so we connect those contiguously, so they snap together.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so yes,
Gotcha.
I'm sorry I wasn't clear on that. So they're modular. So there's a quantity of 16 there. So that's going to give us 2 locations. So eight per area.
Good. Okay. Anyone else? Marilyn?
Hi, Bruce, we at a previous meeting discussed putting Rural Lane on the sidewalk master plan. And my question number 1 is, what kind of money do we have for sidewalks right now? And before you get to that, and what would the cost be total for a sidewalk on Rural Lane?
Sure. So roughly in our sidewalk fund right now, we have a little over $3,000. And I've during our capital committee meetings with Mary and other capital committee members, our Complete Streets program has been submitted, and we're hoping to roughly get about $400,000 a year for various projects such as signal improvements, sidewalks, bike lanes, and things of that nature. So we kind of, like I said, circumvented the sidewalk kind of program as far as our capital planning this year to hopefully offset some of these fundings and hopefully be supplied by the state for these projects. Okay.
Thank you. The reason why I'm asking this is, having reviewed the information you sent out this morning, and thank you very much. I found it, quite helpful just to see what other options were out there. This kind of measure, if we choose to adopt it, is for all intents and purposes reasonably priced, but I look at it still as being a temporary option because you can relocate these humps, these speed humps. And if we were to bring a sidewalk into Rural Lane and provide some protection for pedestrian safety in that neighborhood, perhaps that would be the final answer, and then the speed humps could be used someplace else within the community with a similar type of situation.
Sure. So the sidewalk price, I ran some estimates this morning, is roughly $126,000 for the full length of Rural Lane. And then if we wanted to connect Rural Lane onto Pilgrim Lane onto Parker Street, that'd be $175,000 for that entire project. So $126,000 for Rural Lane, and then obviously connecting with Rural Lane to Pilgrim onto Parker Street, $175,000.
So there are no aren't there sidewalks on Parker, but it's on the other side of the street?
Right, but so that's where, it would end at Parker Street at the end of Pilgrim where it intersects.
Got it. Okay. Thank you very much.
You got it.
Anyone else? So Bruce, Pat, I'm sorry, I did see your hand before.
For Bruce, question, has there been any consideration for a speed bump on Pilgrim?
No, I haven't even considered that. And no one's actually approached me and asked me about Pilgrim.
Yeah.
Just because because it's such a short distance to get to Rural Lane from Pilgrim, I think there's maybe 3 houses. So I don't really think there's a speeding issue getting to Rural Lane. I think it's mainly the Rural Lane corridor that's actually causing the issue.
So then these speed bumps on Rural Lane would be perhaps a quarter mile apart?
Yes, it'd be a third and a third.
Third, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Bruce.
You got it.
Okay, so then I'll ask the question. In terms of the cost, you said in 2 spots, so roughly $3,500, give or take.
Yep, for 2 of them. Yep,
Okay.
and fully installed by the DPW.
Have you given a thought to a funding source?
I was going to ask the council if they could wait till July 1st, and I would take it out of my operational expenses.
Well, I could certainly live with that, but I talked to my colleagues as well. By the time we get them ordered, it will be July 1st.
Well, exactly.
How does
I
everyone
agree,
else
Kath.
feel? Any comment on that?
If we want to identify that as option 2, I would be in favor of trying option 2. And I like the situation that if anything were to change over on Rural Lane where those speed bumps weren't needed to be placed there any longer, that they don't go to waste. We can reconfigure them in the length by Bruce mentioning that they snap together, so they won't go to waste. They'll be able to be used in other areas of the town if needed.
Yeah, agree.
Don, you had your hand, yes.
Yeah, just a couple questions, Bruce. Is additional signage needed, or because of the reflective components within the speed bumps that lets people know they're on their way?
Well, yeah, so I'm going to add additional speed bumps. So it's actually going to be 4 signs at each location on either side of the speed bump, both ways, and maybe do some painting on the roadway. But yes, I can add additional signage, obviously warning, obviously, of the speed bump. But absolutely, yes.
And the follow-up is just a heads up. There might be other streets taking note of this and asking as well. So this may be a first of others, and we'll need to establish criteria as to when we need to make this expenditure as we move forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything else? Then I will entertain a motion for this action, please. Mike, it's yours, but if you're not, I see you're
Okay.
in a remote location.
Obviously, I'm acting from a remote location, but if we want to identify this as option 2, I'd make a motion to adopt option 2.
I think we need to be a little more specific with the verbiage because of the money involved.
Okay, because I don't have that motion,
That's
Don,
fine.
would you be
So
able to do
Don,
that?
do you want to take that then?
I'll do it.
Sure.
Make a motion that removable speed bumps be placed on 2 spots on Rural Road as determined by the police and the DPW, and that the expenditure not to exceed $3,500 will be taken after July 1 on next year's fiscal year's budget out of DPW's operating expense.
I'll second that.
The motion's been made and seconded. Marilyn?
Just a quick comment. The motion read bumps. We're reading speed humps. Do we want to be more
You can
specific?
change the motion entirely because Mike wasn't near his motions.
Okay.
But these are humps,
Correct.
like a camel.
I know there's so many different language and terminology.
Any other questions? Then I will enter, well, we need to vote. Marilyn?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mike?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And Pat?
Yes.
And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And we are down to new business. Discussion of the town council summer meeting schedule. I asked Jeannie to put this on the agenda. Typically, this is the time of year when we have to discuss this, so it's timely enough. The practice that the council has had in the past is to move to a summer schedule of 1 meeting a month instead of 2. And that still keeps us compliant with the charter, which says we must meet at least once monthly and it has to be publicized and so forth. Given the situation of the public health emergency and the various needs that may be asked of us, as well as the deficit spending activity we have to be involved with month to month, and including the fact that it's likely that at least through the summer, we'll still be required to meet remotely by Zoom webinar. I would like to suggest that we keep our regular July and August meeting frequency of 2 times a month, because I believe we're going to be called on more than once a month to be involved in necessary decision-making for our manager and department heads. Clearly with a laptop that you can travel with, if your time takes you to Maine or wherever else, the Cape, further if restrictions are relaxed, you can still key in to an electronic device and still be participating. So I throw that out there for some of your thoughts.
No, that makes sense, Kathy. I would agree with that. I think not knowing, and especially not being able to set a budget, there's going to be a lot of discussions that are going to continue on a weekly basis. And I for one would prefer it to meet twice rather than once, so we don't have to wait a whole month.
Right. Don, did you have something?
Fine, and if even time-wise scheduling because of people's vacations, if flexible hours like we're having today is something we can look into.
Sure. Jeannie, will that be an issue? If let's just say we decided on afternoon meetings in the summer.
I think you'd have to deem the time, if it was the first Tuesday of the month, a special meeting, just like we did for this one, because we
Okay.
did the state of emergency.
All right. So it appears that that would be the only constraint we have to pay attention to then. Okay, well then, Pat.
Thank you, Kathy. I would also agree that scheduling 2 meetings would be best because of the long time between monthly meetings. It lets us, if necessary, cancel it. Much easier than trying to set one up with the 48 hours. And
Right, good
weekend
point.
notice and so forth. So I'm in favor. I love these meetings.
Do we want to, Mike?
I would just say I'm in favor as well. I'd rather have 2 shorter meetings than 1 long meeting. If we want to add a little humor to this, but it all makes sense to me.
Well, I think historically, and again, historically only means barely 4 years, our summer schedule has tended to be lighter, but we're in uncharted waters, so I don't even want to use the word lighter schedule. We did that once, Jeannie, remember? We said we had a light schedule, and we were there for 3.5 hours, so. But I just feel that with our remote capacity, it affords us the ability to meet whenever we need to, and we're best keeping that schedule. This isn't anything that's outlined in the charter, so Jeannie, do you think we can it's an arrangement we're making? Our own rules town council rules don't even say we must have a summer schedule.
I think to the contrary, where previous summers you had to have a motion to sort of go off the standard, while you're sticking to the standard, and like Pat suggests, maybe you can cancel the second meeting if you
Okay, so we should have a motion then.
And I was going to add too, we don't know what the governor's going to announce down the road too that we may have to deal with, like this opening business. So better off to have the 2 meetings a month.
But do we need to actually take a vote to do that?
No.
I don't think so. Okay, that was what I was saying.
Right.
That we don't need to make this official by a formal vote. Okay, well then, thank you for that. I think we can safely get the business of the town done, sitting in front of our computers and try to endure the summer, hopefully, on the outside sometimes versus the inside. Summary of action items for the next meeting. I don't have anything pressing. Do you, Jeannie? Do you see right now that we need to be preparing for?
Not from this meeting, no.
Okay. Anyone else?
How about the follow-up from DPW on Pat Henry's question there, from Felix? I don't know if
Yes,
Bruce was with us.
but I
at the
think
time.
I'm going to, I forgot to ask Bruce to address it. But you know what he can do? If he's, Bruce, is Bruce still in the audience?
Here he is.
Bruce, I forgot to go back to Pat's question about say that big long word, haleo something or other.
Ileocytic acids and trihalomethanes. Yes.
Yeah. Can you spell it now, please?
Yeah. No, I can't do that though. So I know, Pat, you're asking, what are we doing about it? Unfortunately, these are DBPs. These are disinfection byproducts of chlorination, which obviously kills bacteria, biological contaminants in our water. And where we are receiving these exceedants is the direct connection with Springfield at our Harkness station. So we work closely with Springfield Water and Sewer, the DEP, where we have these exceedances in order to help, obviously, hopefully reduce these DBPs. On a weekly basis, we're actually getting reports from Springfield Water and Sewer on how much chlorine that's entering the system. So when the water does get into our Harkness station, because we do have our own treatment there, that we don't add additional chlorine or things of that nature into the water to obviously elevate these DBPs. So we're working with DEP. Like you said, whenever we do have an exceedance, we have to do a operation evaluation report. In Springfield has to do it also. So this is a lot of paperwork and a kind of a big headache for Springfield as well. So we're working closely with them and hopefully get this back under control.
Bruce, I believe you are. I believe you've been working on this very hard, but it's been probably a year.
Yes, yes.
And so is there anything different that you have found that's gonna help make this go away? Because I know it's not all us.
It's right. Springfield is in the process of investing millions and millions of dollars up at their facility up on Cobble Mountain. So we're actually seeing some of those expenses, and I believe I talked about it last year. It's reflected in our operational budget. Some of these upgrades. So they're in the process of getting these new filtration systems online in order to help with these problems. So hopefully in the near future, and what contributes a lot to this is rainfall. When we have a lot of rainfall, you have a lot of obviously organic matter entering the reservoirs and things like that. So you get high blooms of biological matter, which obviously in turn you need to chlorinate the system more, and you get more of these THMs and HAAs. So like you said, the less rain, the better, but on the other side, it doesn't help our lawns or landscaping. So we're working closely. I'm very confident this year will be a much better year when it comes to these byproducts. So we'll keep you informed. Okay.
I want to reiterate that it's a very technical violation. Nothing that anyone should be concerned with that's watching this meeting, and we're working on it. But I just want to try to hope that these technical violations can cease.
Yes, and we constantly get that. Is the water safe to drink? It absolutely is safe to drink. It's just like I said, these are reporting requirements from the DEP and the EPA that requires us to do so. There you go, Mary. Cheers.
I'm drinking too.
Thank you.
You got it.
Anything else? Thank you for that, Bruce.
You got it.
Bruce, quick question. Springfield's thinking of, so actually a question from the audience who just texted me on social media. Springfield is looking to increase its water rates next week, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And how quickly does that reflect on ours?
It doesn't. We are under contract with Springfield Water and Sewer, so that's actually for their operational expenses. So it doesn't impact us in any way.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Anything else this afternoon? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
I second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Marilyn?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mike?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And Pat?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned at 3:18 p.m. and we'll be back in session again on Tuesday, June the 23rd. Thank you and good afternoon.